And this is the human brain. Okay, you do not know about the blood supply to the cochlea. There is no direct supply. There is one artery which supplies. Now you must have heard that nowadays everything was okay, and one fine morning somebody just fell down. Half of it is paralyzed. Speech is affected, and the person cannot speak the way he or she could do earlier, and that is known as what? Cannot speak. Aphasia. Aphasia, right? So aphasia happens because of a cerebrovascular accident. Cerebro means what? Something to do with the brain? Something to do with the cerebrum is cerebro. Vascular is something to do with the blood supply. An accident is something to do with the abnormal way in which the blood has entered in or went in. So here if you see, if this is the brain, this is the cortical part of the brain, which are the core arteries which supply and which are of a concern to a speech language pathologist? Can you name 3, 2, 1? You should be. Medial cerebral artery, MCA. Middle cerebral artery, MCA. Anterior cerebral artery and posterior cerebral artery. Correct? So these are the 3 blood vessels predominantly supplying the cortex. So from a speech language pathologist perspective, if there is a cerebrovascular accident to either MCA or ACA or PCA, there will be some or the other effect which is available. So here we can see on the frontal lobe we have this particular area, and this area is known as Broca's area, which means that whatever I am speaking and this particular motor coordination is happening in the Broca's area. I may be having all thoughts, but if I have Broca's area, can I teach you? No. I may be having all the thoughts, but these particular articulations will not come out of my mouth because Broca's area is damaged. So the blood vessel which is supplying here, in case gets ruptured, then the blood comes out of the blood vessel. If the blood comes out of the blood vessels, what happens?
No blood goes to the Broca's
area. If blood comes out of the blood vessels, you never had a wound or a cut. You had a wound, right? What happens? Blood keeps flowing, no?
Yes,
then it drains all 5 liters of blood, then you collapse or what? No. What happens then?
Clot.
Yes, clot happens. So once clot happens, clot is solid, liquid or gas?
Solid.
Clot is solid. That means once blood comes out of the blood vessel here, it will clot in these areas. As it clots, it's a solid. That solid would be applying any solid?
Pressure.
Yes. It will be applying a pressure against the area. If it applies a pressure against the area, will it function? No. If it applies pressure for quite some time, a considerable amount of duration, then what will happen? Something which is inside, if I press your finger like this for let's say 2 days, then what will happen? No blood supply and this will become gangrene, no? It will go off. So necrosis will happen in this area. So if the clot is not clear and if it keeps doing pressure, then there will be a necrosis in this area and that particular area will not be functioning. So if this particular area is not functioning, what happens? My capacity to express myself is lost post the cerebrovascular accident. It's known as Broca's aphasia. In case it happens to this particular area, which is which part of the brain? Frontal, parietal or temporal, no? If it happens to the parietal, temporal lobe or posterior part of the parietal lobe, then what happens? Which is this area? No. Wernicke's area is always in this red part, remember? It is in the temporal lobe. Angular gyrus and supramarginal gyrus. These are the areas which are responsible for reading and writing. If the damage is there, then reading writing would be gone. If the damage is further below in the temporal lobe, first convolution of the temporal lobe, then the clot may create a pressure and a necrosis and the person may not be in a position to understand. So whatever I am saying, not understand. And if I don't understand what I am saying, then whatever I say will be rubbish only, no?
Yes.
So there is a parallel word known as logoria. Diarrhea, logoria. Whatever you speak is rubbish because the Wernicke's area is damaged. You cannot understand whatever even you are saying. Correct now? Similarly, if the damage spreads across in this particular connection between Broca's and Wernicke's area, this connection is known as what? Correct, arcuate fasciculus. So it connects the Broca's and the Wernicke's area. If I ask you to say Papa, Papa, you can say this because you heard it, you understood it, you sent it like this, you again told it a feedback when it came here. This repetition is there because there is a connection between both because of the arcuate fasciculus. So this goes out, there is a conduction aphasia, correct? No? Similar multiple types. If everything is gone, then a global aphasia. So this all happens due to the blood supply damage. So you should be knowing which are the different blood vessels which supply the cortex, the cortical areas. So here there is a nice piece of TLM which has been made, which shows the blood supply to the brain. So if you see this, this is the lateral view. Lateral view means what? This view. Side view. Okay. And here somebody is taking a photograph. That this will fall down. Lateral view would be a view which is taken from this side. This photograph is a lateral view. Right. So if you see from the lateral view, then which are the different blood vessels and which are the areas which are being supplied from here? So this will be the lateral view. So here you can see the red color coding is the medial cerebral artery. Okay, the middle cerebral artery. So MCA supplies to this entire area. So remember, it comes somewhere here. So this damage to the MCA is one of the major reasons why aphasia would be happening. So you should be knowing this is the full area. So this entire area would be supplied by the medial cerebral artery. This is the anterior part of the brain. Anterior means towards the nose, no? This yellow portion of the frontal lobe, the parietal lobe, occipit, and the parietal lobe. These two areas would be supplied by the anterior part, no, anterior cerebral artery. And the blue portion, occipital lobe, and some part of the parietal and temporal lobe would be supplied by the posterior cerebral artery. So anterior and posterior and medial. Clear now? The MCA would be supplying the major part. Now we want to see what happens inside the brain. So what we do, we turn the brain and there are various planes to it now. Correct? If I cut the brain like this, let's say. So if I cut the brain, let's say, if I want to see what is happening, and if I cut the brain like this, if I cut the brain, that means from here I am cutting myself like this. Then what is this particular section known as? What is the section known as? It starts with C. Coronal section, right? Coronal section. So if you cut the brain like this, then what happens? You find something of this nature. And the coronal section, if you see, then the medial cerebral artery, red color, the PCA, posterior cerebral artery, and the anterior cerebral artery this way. Now there is one more section which is left. I have to cut the brain this way and see the middle part. I saw it like this, lateral. I cut it like this, known as the coronal section. Now I want to cut it like this and see what. So if I cut the brain like this, that means on this, if you see, then it is cut in this axis. And then you see that the major portion of it is supplied by the anterior cerebral artery and a bit of it by the PCA. The MCA is not into it. So the middle part of the brain, the corpus callosum and the other part is mostly supplied by the anterior cerebral artery. Right? So these are the three major arteries: anterior cerebral artery, middle cerebral artery and the posterior cerebral artery. And this is how they supply our brain. And you should be knowing this very through and through, because the damage would be causing aphasia, which needs to be treated by a speech language pathologist. Correct? So to summarize, this is the brain, this is the cerebral cortex. We have approximately 10 different language areas which are there responsible for processing. All this voluntary activity is happening in these cortical areas. You know, you have this cauliflower, a stalk, and the flower above it. The flower above it is actually the cortex, where voluntary processing happens. You know, I am doing it deliberately. That's what happens. And here, if you can see the Broca's area, third convolution of the frontal lobe, Wernicke's area. Broca's is area number 44. Correct. Why are you confused about that? And then Wernicke's area, first convolution of the frontal lobe, temporal lobe, area number 22, 23. Something like that, no? Then you have the angular gyrus and the supramarginal gyrus for reading and writing. You have the arcuate fasciculus connected amongst them. Then you'll be having the basal ganglia stuff. Aphasia, the motor planning also happens here. Right? So these all the areas need to be supplied adequately through blood supply, and this blood supply is predominantly given by three major arteries which are known as
Middle cerebral.
MCA, anterior cerebral artery, posterior cerebral artery, and the medial cerebral artery. Understand? Fine. Done.